All right, Nick, let's talk about some Alabama Crimson Tide. We're looking towards January 1st, Michigan versus Alabama. That is the game. That is the thing that is on everybody's mind. And Coach Nick Saban has been digging, he's been searching. How can this team possibly get a leg up on the competition? What things can they do to give them a competitive edge and a slight advantage over the Wolverines? And I think they've found it with this latest hire. Let's get into the article and we'll talk about it on the other side. This, of course, over on The Athletic. It says Alabama is hiring former Michigan linebackers coach George Hilo to its coaching staff before the Rose Bowl. The Athletic reported Thursday. Though Hilo wasn't a part of this year's Michigan staff, he did serve under current defensive coordinator Jesse Mintner in 2022. His knowledge of the Wolverine system will be a valuable asset as Alabama faces its toughest defensive challenge yet. This season, Michigan ranks first nationally in scoring defense, 9.46 points per game, second in total defense, 239.2 yards per game. Two of Hilo's former linebackers, Colson and Michael Barrett, were all Big Ten selections for this season. Hilo hired as a potential to turn into a full-time opportunity on Alabama's staff after this season. Current outside linebacker coach and special team coordinator Coleman Hutzler has accepted a defensive coordinator job at Mississippi State, which leaves a void on the staff. So there's a lot of different angles on why this was a good hire, Nick. First and foremost, Hilo seems very familiar with Michigan's team, with the all play calls, everything going on with the system of Michigan in general. Also, he fills an immediate void on Alabama staff so they can try him out, see if he is a good fit. And I think this could all around be a really smart coaching decision for the now, but also for the future for Alabama as well. This is Nick Saban, once again, thinking outside the box and finding a guy who really can benefit this team, because there's not really too much in the way of getting through a team, especially this late into the season. But to find a guy who is available, who, obviously you're not going to steal someone away from a team off the team right now, but this is a guy coach on the same defensive staff with Mintner last year. Somehow Nick Saban found him. He's available. Get him to come in the building, get this team ready. I think this really is going to help Alabama out, and I think we'll potentially see the results on game day. I'm curious, Nick, what your thoughts are on this hire and what this means for Alabama. But Bama fans, let us know in the comments below. What do you think in the score of the Alabama-Michigan game is going to be? What do you think about this hire? I think this hire is a very interesting one as well. Let us know in the comments below. But Nick, what do you think about this hire for Alabama?
So I think what Nick Saban's doing here is a little bit opposite of what the top level thing here is. The vibe is like, oh, he's looking for a leg up in Michigan's defense. I don't think that's the case at all. So obviously, this is very comparable to Nick Saban's NFL counterpart in Bill Belichick. And people who know a lot about the history of Bill Belichick is that earlier in his career, he would sit in offensive meetings with the offensive coordinator, namely Charlie Weiss, who of course worked as an offensive coordinator with the Giants and then would go on to be the offensive coordinator under Belichick with the New England Patriots for a number of those Super Bowls. And he would tell Weiss how he would attack Weiss's offense. And Weiss would use that as a way to counteract those potential defensive attacks. Of course, Belichick being a very smart defensive mind. This is what we're seeing here. Jesse Minter under Michigan has done a phenomenal job creating a very good defense, one of the top defenses in the country, and they're very good at attacking and forcing teams to making mistakes, big time turnovers that normally don't. We saw that in Michigan's victory over Penn State. We saw that in Michigan's victory over Ohio State. And then we saw that in Michigan's victory over Iowa. They take teams that are usually very good at taking care of the football and force them to make all kinds of mistakes. In fact, Minter, the Michigan defensive coordinator, made CJ Stroud look pretty human when Michigan played them twice. Of course, CJ Stroud put up 41 against Georgia at the end of his college career and is now dominating the NFL. So what Minter did to Stroud is very commendable. I think what Saban is doing here is bringing in a guy and say, listen, you coached under Minter. You know how he thinks. You know how he operates. I want you to look at our offense and tell me how you think he would attack it. I think that's exactly what Saban is doing here. He's planning to basically counterattack what Minter's going to bring to the table. So from that perspective, I think that's his focus here. He wants to know how Minter's going to get after Jalen Monroe, how Minter's going to try and stop the run, how Minter's going to try and cover Burton and Bond and all those guys, how Minter's going to address the running game of the Alabama Crimson Tide, how they're going to run fit, things like that. And I think this is the best way to do it, by taking a defensive guy to figure out how Michigan would do it. So from that perspective, I think this is a really great move from Alabama right here. And this gives them, I think, a big advantage. I think they're already going to be big favorites, in my opinion. I don't know what Vegas is saying, but I think they'd be big favorites in my book over Michigan. I think this just pushed them over the top even more.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because Alabama defensively, they're already very good. They have a lot of stars on this defense. This is a defense that is going to be good in its own right, but I don't think, like you said, I don't think Hilo coming in is going to add a whole lot to the Alabama defensive side of things. I really agree with what you say about them being able to kind of prepare this offense better for a Michigan style of defense, kind of like, an audit of the offense, like you said, sits in, picks it apart. I really think that is the way, that's the most value you could get out of Hilo, understanding their defense and then mainly understanding how it is going to attack this offense. So that is going to be a very, very good asset for Alabama. But also, I think this is a great option as far as if he does add a lot of value to this team, having an open spot on this team, I think it could be a valuable asset for him to be potentially a future guy for this program. He's done a really great job developing a linebacker position at Michigan. So this guy, twofold hire here. And I really think Nick Saban did it again. He made a great hire. And I think that we're going to see this one potentially work this coming game and many games in the future.
Yeah, you bring up a great point because not only you bring in a guy that could maybe help you against Michigan, if this guy was an assistant under mentor under Harbaugh in Michigan, that's a very smart, capable staff. And we've seen it when Harbaugh was, of course, suspended, the ability of that staff, the coordinators to grow and work together and come away with big time victories. So that's obviously a very good coaching staff up there in Ann Arbor. So Nick Saban, being smart, as he obviously is, says, listen, if I got a hole in my coaching staff, I want to pick a young, smart, up and coming guy. And know what better place to pull from than a guy who's coached under those great coordinators up there in Michigan under Harbaugh. That I think is another smart move for Alabama, like you said. So not only does it help them potentially in the short term, you're also picking a guy to potentially fill a void on your staff who's coached with a lot of really smart, talented people. So no matter how you look at it, once again, another great move by Nick Saban. And this is why, again and again, I feel like we say this every few months, Alabama isn't going away. They're going to be good in September, October, November, December, probably January, into the future years as well.